We will open the meeting at 6:30. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Right there all the time. Comedic relief tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
George Cullis.
Here.
Karen Winchester here. Jennifer Ryan. Here. Derek Burton.
Here.
Ryan Matson.
Here.
Mike McCamey.
Here.
Richard Kinnaman.
Here.
Agenda approval. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Winchester, support by Burton. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we go to public comment. Public comment on agenda item only. Members of the public can address the board on an agenda item only. Once recognized by the supervisor, comments are limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. The board may extend this time by a majority vote. Prior to addressing the board, members of the public shall state their name and address for the record. A second public comment is available after new business for all other comments. Thank you for your cooperation.
I'm Amy Hillman. As one of your employees, I was asked to read this by Joe Hutchins. So this is Joe Hutchins, 419 Thomas Street. Dear Board of Trustees, I am Joe Hutchins. I have served in Holly as a board member since the early 90s. In 1996, I joined the Holly Township Parks Commission and continue to hold an elected seat. During my time on the Parks Board, I had been faced with numerous challenges, but none as much as dealing with my fellow board members, Donna McBride, Kathleen Martin, Jeff Carl, and Dave Lontine. I will say that each member has contributed to our parks. Each one has volunteered their time and played a part in shaping our parks as they are right now. And each individual has helped to create the situations we are facing today. There are rights and responsibilities of an elected official, and the responsibility to the taxpayer. Today, we have a dysfunctional board that does not take ownership of the part they have played in creating a toxic work environment for our previous program coordinator, in starting projects and never finishing them, in promoting hostile discord during public open meetings, violating the Open Meetings Act with group texts and sidebar conversations, and in hiding in the woods where we are unable to live stream meetings and involve the public. These are only a few of the glaring issues that I see moving forward with the board as elected. Legally, I find the most problematic to be the lack of understanding and use of parliamentary procedure and the Open Meetings Act. I believe this is to be an extension of today's issues, the lack of due diligence and personal ownership. Every person that runs for office should be doing their due diligence to know what is required of them. 4 of the 5-member board did not follow through. They did not collectively understand what was needed for the millage-funded department to have an effective and legal board. But I am personally concerned with the treatment of our administrative staff by these 4 board members. Their willingness to create a contentious, mean-spirited environment that they could very well create a liability issue between a defunct board and future employees. Our taxpayers deserve representatives that take ownership of their elected position, reflect the needs and wants of the community, and know how to work as a team with the utmost respect for our natural resources. I request the Board of Trustees take this opportunity to reset the Parks Board. I would like to offer my own recommendations for the following appointments. Jane DeSessa, with excessive experience in governance. Mary Blanchard, former Parks Board member and longtime supporter and volunteer. Tim Taylor, experienced in various aspects of park programming and a Village Parks member. James Wright, experience in governance, a connection with Holly Little League, and an IT technician. Thank you for your time and consideration, Joe Hutchins. Thank you.
Next for public comment, Mary Blanchard.
Mary Blanchard, 3444 Old Creek Drive, Holly, Michigan. I understand that 4 of the Holly Township Park Commissioners did not get sworn into their positions before January 1st, 2025 deadline. The 4 were elected by the
Excuse me,
people.
Mary. Is that microphone working? It is. Are you folks able to hear out there? No. No?
Mary Blanchard, 3444 Old Creek Drive, Holly, Michigan. Last time I blew everybody out of the water. I understand that the 4 of the Holly Township Parks Commissioners did not get sworn into their positions before the January 1st, 2025 deadline. The 4 were elected by the people in the November 2024 election. I understand that there is the possibility of their being able to be reappointed through Michigan state law. If the 4 commissioners do not reapply or are not reappointed, I would like to submit my name for consideration of being appointed as a Holly Township Parks and Recreation Commissioner. I was a previous Holly Township Parks Commissioner years ago, and I feel strongly that Holly Township Parks need to be improved. The parks are underutilized, and part of this appears due to residents not being aware of Sorensen Park and the Nature Center, as well as Holly Township Beach at Bush Lake. I'm currently serving as the interim manager of Holly Township Parks and Recreation since mid-October. I have worked with current staff to make some needed improvements and are making plans for future improvements to the grounds and bringing activities to the parks that will hopefully bring Holly residents and people outside the area to our parks. One of the areas that Sorensen Park is lacking is park stewardship and invasive removal. I have experience with invasive removal of multiple types of plants due to my volunteer work with North Oakland Headwaters Land Conservancy, now Blue Heron Headwaters Conservancy. I also served on the board of NOHLC and was an auditor for the group in overseeing the board activities to make sure they were carrying out our mission. I also am a longtime volunteer with Headwaters Trails, Inc., and I am currently serving as board secretary of this group. In addition to serving on the boards of NOHLC and Headwaters Trails, I'm currently serving on the leadership team of the Citizen Advisory Work Group at the state of Michigan level under MPART, Michigan PFAS Action Response Team. I believe that I'm capable of preparing well for board meetings, expressing myself clearly, and I'm able to accept other board members' views even when they do not agree with my own. I believe that it is necessary to compromise when possible to achieve goals and activities for the good of the parks and our community. I'd be happy to discuss this opportunity further when convenient. Sincerely, Mary Blanchard.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Raise your hand.
I don't think I need to hold this, but that work? My name is Jeff Carl. My address is 16308 Tucker Road in Holly. I am one of the 4 people that's been excused from the board due to my non-pledge. But I was appointed to the board. I believe I've been on it 2 years plus now. And relative to Joe's comments, I think there has been some difficulty with the board. I don't see it as extreme as what Joe expressed, but I would also like to bring up the fact that Joe was our leader, and without great leadership, I think things run awry. So enough said about that. But my background primarily has been in marketing and advertising, and I'm retired now. Currently I do more renovation work, but I grew up at the beach. That's my passion. In the last 2 years, we've made considerable improvements. Thanks to Amy's husband, we have a new steel roof on the beach house. We just did new siding. Thanks to Robert Montgomery, thanks to Vince Iafano, his work crew. We've done some painting. We've got bids out to do painting on the beach house, the pavilion. Most upsetting to me is the condition of the beach when I got there. There's so much more to do. There's so much neglect that's gone on in the past years. I moved the ropes out this spring because it used to be up to here, and that was it. That was a day at the beach. Wander into the beach and you're up to this far. I moved them out 15 feet. Now it's up to here. However, the beach hasn't been taken care of. When I say beach, I mean in the water. If you go to the left, you go to the right, you're going to sink into mud up to your knees. All this needs to be taken care of, and my mission, my goal is to take care of all this. That's my passion to the beach, and I hope you will consider my resume and my wish to continue my tenure on the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Next for public comment.
Hello, my name is Dave Lontine. I live at 116 Marion Drive. I'd just like to say that I apologize for not taking the oath on time. I care about the park immensely. I don't know. I apologize, and I hope you still consider me for.
Thank you. Next. Kathleen?
Kathleen Martin, 109 Park Avenue. I am also one of the displaced commissioners and was upset and disheartened when I realized through an email on the 10th of January that my commissionship was in jeopardy. In years past, we have been notified after the election because I received my certificate from the Oakland County that says, congratulations, you are now a Holly Township Park Commissioner, again, in my case. But this year that courtesy was not extended, and at a very busy time in my life, between work and family, and the fact that offices were shut down for several weeks before the first, it was an oversight. And I apologize to the 4,112 people that voted for me, that won me the seat, to continue for my 8th year as a Holly Township Park Commissioner. That apology will stand as my public comment at this time. And I would also, with my resume in place there, I hope, like to be reconsidered, to be reappointed to the seat that I was elected to. Thank you.
I have one question.
Sure.
Am I to understand you never received a certificate from the county?
I did receive a certificate from the county
Okay.
saying that I had
You did receive.
was
Okay.
elected into
Thank you.
the position.
Next. Well, Kristen, you were next.
Kristen Watt, 102 South First Street, number 3. I want to start by acknowledging the good work that is done for this community in this office. Local small town government is often a thankless job, and I am well aware that the hours of work that are put in behind the scenes to ensure our community functions as it should, the taxpayers' needs are attended to, and our elections are run ethically and efficiently. I have always complimented the work done by Karen, Amy, and Christy in regard to elections, and I stand by those compliments. We are all human, and oversights and errors happen, and there are consequences for that, but this should not be a place of punishment. All 5 trustees elected 3 months ago have previously served many for many years, and all have given their time, resources, and passions to our parks. None of these individuals are lazy, complacent, or stupid. Regardless of Joe Hutchins' opinion of his fellow commissioners, it is clear to me and many in this community that somewhere was a communication and expectation breakdown when not 1 but 4 out of 5 elected officials did not get sworn in on time. Communication and policy and procedures are the proactive answer to ensure this never happens again. I would recommend an agenda item next month to create a single procedure that the board meeting following every election, all officials attend and are sworn in at the same time on site. The ethical thing to do is to uphold the will of the people and appoint these 4 individuals. This is not any typical vacant seat. This is a group of elected people that were elected less than 90 days ago, and I have no disrespect to anyone else who applied. Anything less is a slap in the face to voters. Regardless of who is appointed, whether it be this evening or furthermore, I am more concerned at this time about an encounter between the Township Supervisor and one of these elected trustees for a variety of reasons. In mid to late January, one of these elected, supposedly, according to them, came to your office and brought in their application for this appointment process. I would assume this is deemed in a meeting as a potential employment screening or interview. It is my understanding that letters were received by the supervisor in regard to this individual with concerns, one of a former Parks employee and one of a current Village employee. And in the context of that communication, a letter or a statement was made that this individual was an unmedicated bipolar. During the course of, individual was caught off guard and in shock, and after further discussion, individual asked the supervisor if he should even come to the meeting. He stated he was advised that if he did, he should expect questions regarding those accusations. This encounter and threats of questioning someone's medical information are a violation of the American Disabilities Act and Civil Rights Act. This is a pattern because a little over 2 years ago, there is still ongoing litigation about age discrimination from a former employee that is still in court being drug out after 2 years. I have advised this individual, if he feels deemed, to file a formal complaint with the state of Michigan regarding this ADA violation. The people choose their officials not only, and this body should only be choosing it when necessary. I know many of you on this board, all differences aside, to be people of integrity, and I am requesting a formal policy for swearing in to be created or updated and to please uphold the will of the people. Thank you.
Angela?
Angela Wallace, 709 Baird Street. I'm just going to piggyback on what Kristen said. She pretty much covered what my issues were. But Kathleen pointed out a very particular number, 4,112 people voted for these people to be in office. So for it to come down to 7 people that are sitting here, I think we need to follow the will of the people. They've spoken. They're the ones who use these parks. They're the ones that want these parks. They're the ones who want these people who are here and took the time to be here tonight to represent them. I was approached by Joe Hutchins on a sidewalk telling me, we need people to apply for these parks because I don't want to work with them. They won't listen to me. I'm sorry, these 4 people seem to get along quite wonderfully, and Donna's not here because she's been ill. So I would dare to say these 5 people get along lovely. If Joe doesn't want to work with them, maybe he's the one that should step down, and these people should be the ones who run our Parks Board. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Angie?
I probably need this. Or down like this, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was not prepared to come tonight, but I will say this, I've thought about it and thought about it and thought about it ever since I saw that there was going to be this special meeting tonight. Congratulations, all of you have gotten me to come to a meeting again. I have not been to a meeting in 2 years since I had my carotid artery surgeries because I had quit everything, and everybody knows this who knows me. Well, you did it. You got me to come here. I am like beyond belief upset about this. I don't even know where to start, except to say that, like everybody else has said, these people were voted on. I don't know what happened. I don't think any of us know what happened. Maybe Karen knows what happens because she's over the voting stuff. But whatever happened had to have been some kind of crazy, I don't know, fluke or something. How could one person have been sworn in and the rest of them not? Only that one person knew what he was supposed to do? I don't think so. Except for the fact that, yes, Joe has been on the Parks Commission for many years, but I'm sorry, it just seems kind of crazy to me that he was the only one that was sworn in. So what happened to the rest of the people? And to me, it only seems like common sense, or should I say common courtesy, to have sent out some kind of notice or something and say, hey, you know what, you've got a limit of so much time. I know we should be responsible for ourselves. But by the same token, doesn't it sound like something's wrong here? Like some kind of communication wasn't done right or something for only one person to come in? And all I gotta say is, these people were voted for. They should be the first ones, top priorities to make the list of whoever you're gonna appoint for this. And I don't even know why they have to reapply. They've already done what they were supposed to do. And what happened, you people know apparently, but somehow communication broke down. I don't know what it was, but all I can say is it's a shame, and congratulations again, you got me there.
All right, thank you. Angie, it's good to see you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? None appearing? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm hiding in the corner.
You are?
Yes, because I've had the flu, and the only reason I am up here, sorry. Amber Kyer, 710 East Maple. I'm the daughter of Donna Marie McBride, and I felt like I had to come here to stand in for her. She has been sick with heart issues. I've also been sick. So we've had to quarantine from each other for this last week. This has been an exceptionally hard time for her. I humbly ask that you guys reappoint the people that were voted on by the people. This was some kind of glitch in the matrix. I don't know what happened. I don't need to know. All I need to know is that we can fix it, right? We all see a problem. How do we fix the problem? My solution would be to create maybe a policy or procedure for the future to ensure that this never happens again. Because to be clear, this is unprecedented. This has never happened before. We are setting a precedence right now with whatever you guys vote for. You will set a new precedence. I want to take a minute to talk about kindness, because we talk about accountability, and I believe all these people have taken accountability for what they have done. But nobody talks about kindness. I was voted on to the council, and let me say I am speaking as just a regular citizen. I am not here as a village council or a village parks member. But when I was voted in, I sat next to Richard Kenneman, knowing nothing. I was a new baby politician. Richard didn't know me from Adam, and he turned to me at my first meeting and he said, hey, you know, the MML offers this great training opportunity for newly elected officials. He didn't have to do that. It wasn't his job. There was no procedure that said that he had to do that. He did that as a kindness to me. It created a ripple so that when I sat down at this newly elected board and I had a new council person sitting next to me, I also turned to him and I said, hey, let me tell you about this fantastic training opportunity that's completely free to you. It was a kindness that Richard gave to me, and it created a ripple. And that's what I'm asking you to do tonight, is to create a ripple of kindness, to show our children that it might not be your job, but that's half of the problem with today's ills, is all of us looking around and saying, well, it's not my job, right? But it is our job. It is our job to take care of our fellow man. So that's what I humbly ask you is that you show kindness tonight and that you respect the will of the voters. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Amy Hillman, 6053 Great Lakes Drive. I have wrestled with this for some time, and because I was in the office when it was, originally discussed. And as someone that's worked in government for the majority of my life and one that aspires to continue to work in government for the majority of the rest of my life, I do have a fundamental issue with going against the vote of the people. I have a really hard time with it. And that being said, there was 5 people running for the Parks Commission, and I didn't vote for any of them. And I can tell you why I didn't vote for any of them. Because while I believe that independently and individually, they may be fantastic people that have given their time freely and volunteered to steward the tax dollars of our community, I will talk about kindness. And I'm going to refer back to a lesson that I learned in a very difficult way. Mark Freeman taught me that it is not about the person, it is about the position. And in my position, I counseled the employee of the Holly Township Parks Commission. Not only did I counsel her, but I dried her tears. And I actually encouraged her to let them fail. And that's where I believe all of this arises. Because they didn't have a director, and because they didn't have a coordinator to remind them what they had to do, which was their responsibility as an elected official. But also, when we're talking about kindness, I know the treatment that she went through. So as an employee that has went through a toxic work environment, so toxic I can't even talk about it, I would state that the reason I didn't vote for all 5 of the people, I am not one of the 4,112, because I counseled the employee of the people that are stewards of our tax dollars on how badly she was treated. I witnessed and read the OMA violations in the group texts amongst those board members. I read and witnessed I'm not even going to go there. We can talk about kindness, and we can talk about responsibility. And as someone that works in government and works directly with you, I think that it is important to realize that, and I'll include Joe in that, because I do agree, there is a ripple. And obviously Joe did have a reason not to extend the fact or the kindness to his fellow board members that they should be sworn in.
Amy, if I can interrupt. We have a 3-minute limit on the public comment. I let a few of you go over. Some of you didn't use the 3 minutes. But at this point, I want to ask the board if you want to extend time. She's reached her 3 minutes. It doesn't sound like she's wrapping up. So is there a motion to extend the time?
So move.
Moved by Burton, second by Ryan. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, just wanted to stay.
There is a reason for legal processes, for policies and procedures. And actually, I can tell you that that is one of the things that is lacking within the Holly Township Parks, is the existence of policies and procedures and legal entity that is adhered to. There is a concern as a taxpayer that the 5 board members did not know what legally needed to happen for this Parks Board to move forward legally. That is a problem for me. If you're taking the time to submit to be elected and to be the steward of the tax dollar, then you should know the legal responsibilities that are required of you by the state of Michigan to be an elected official. One of those being the oath of office. So while I do understand that individually they have done great work at the parks, collectively, I do not find them to be a reliable or responsible board. So while I do have a fundamental issue with not observing the vote of the people was for these board members because they were the only 5 board members on the ballot. I am not one of the 4,112, but I am one of your employees that is telling you that this board collectively is an HR liability. And while that former employee has gone now, probably at my recommendation, because I did sit for many, many hours to counsel her and how to get through the day or how to get through a board meeting or how to get through a project without having an issue, how to deal with a very blatant OMA violation that I do believe that she advised against and still continued. That is a liability on our tax dollar. And again, individually, I know that these people have done great things, but collectively, they are an issue. So if you do choose to put these elected board members into their seats, then I challenge them to do better. I challenge them to be kind. I challenge you to take your own advice, because I was the one that dried the tears of your employee on my dime. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Randy Finkbeiner, 15335 Catalina Way. Imagine, if you will, you as a board were elected. And you're elected to your seat, and there's an omission of one procedure of getting sworn in. And there's another board that's going to sit here and decide that you don't deserve that anymore, and we're going to appoint somebody else. Imagine, if you would, another board doing that to you folks, if you had made that mistake. They were elected, and if elections go bad, as we've seen locally, statewide, countywide, and nationally, we change them at the ballot box. We'll vote somebody else in. But you should not have a board, if it's being considered other people, when the elected board has expressed interest of retaining their seat based on a technicality. Just think if there was another board deciding that for you because of a technicality. Is that the way we work this democracy? Is that the way we run our community? We don't care for somebody, and I'm not saying you guys do. I'm going with what's being out there in the community. If we don't like what they're doing, as the last speaker just said, we challenge them to do better. If we really don't like what they're doing and they're doing that poorly, we don't vote them in next time. We get somebody else to step up. Anybody else that may have applied for this position to be appointed, not elected, obviously didn't care enough to get on the ballot and try to get elected. That's got to tell you something. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Going once, twice? Okay. We will move to the subject of Holly Township Park Commission appointments. So I've been in office for 8 years, and the day I got in office, I got a phone call from the former director, Tony Brinker, asking for my help. She had an issue with the township. The clerk had made the decision that she was no longer going to handle the finances for the parks. It had been vetted through the attorney, through the state law, and there was nothing that said she was obligated to do so. Tony had come to me at the time and said, "Can you intercede? Can we work this out?" And I said, "Let me look into it." So I did my research, I checked the law, I met with Karen, was the clerk at the time. I met with Karen, she gave me her reasons, and I said to Karen, I said, "Do me a favor, when she brings the paperwork in for this month's bills, can I see them?" And they came in on a Thursday afternoon, and Karen said, "Here they are," and I took them, and I went through them, and it looked like a Sudoku puzzle. It was just this array of papers and such, and there was a paper that was handwritten that kind of brought the total down and said that's what's to be paid. There were some bills that were past due. One of the complaints that Tony had said to me was they never pay the bills on time, and we always get charged interest because they're not paid on time. Well, I looked at them, and the date that they were received in the mail versus the date that they came to the township, there was quite a gap, number one. Well, what was happening was they were saving the bills for the township parks to approve paying the bills, and then once they were approved, they brought them to the township. The problem is, as that process went through, they weren't getting paid on time. When it came in on Thursday, that meant it really wasn't going to get looked at because it was Thursday afternoon. It really wasn't going to get dealt with until Monday morning, and it then had to go through the process of the clerk's office back to the treasurer. There are checks and balances set up in government that handles the way that this stuff gets processed. At the same time, and going back 8 years, I'm trying to remember, the interest was put into a line item, and they hadn't subtracted the interest from the previous month, so it made it look like twice what it really was. The whole thing was a mess. My solution at the time was twofold. I said, what we need is a paper that they would fill out, and it would be done in a format, and it would make sense. The other thing that needs to happen is the parks need to pass, they need to put it on the agenda, and they need to authorize the township to pay those bills that are of a timely manner at the time they come in, so they don't have to wait for their monthly meeting to approve the bills. And I had checked, and you can do that kind of a thing. The problem is the relationship had broken down to the point when I suggested some of those changes for the parks, they didn't want to do that. I remember I met with Alan Motsney, and there was another lady on the park board at that time, so that they could go over and see that. And I asked them, do you realize what's being turned in? And they had no idea. They did see how it was confusing. So at that point, the decisions had been made, and there wasn't any movement that we could go forward. There was nothing that mandated the clerk's office to do that, and there was nothing that forced the park boards to change the way they handled the policy. So we were in an impasse, and it got changed over where the parks took on their own. Now, we in Holly Township have a separately elected library board, and we have a separately elected park board. What's interesting is if you go to the Library Act, which created the position of a separately elected park board, the township doesn't have any oversight over their budget. The township isn't responsible for replacing empty chairs. However, the township is responsible to write the checks, which I always thought was interesting. Why can't they write their own checks, seeing as they're autonomous? But the state law says that's the way it is. In the Park Act, we have a separately elected board that is designed to run the parks. However, in the Park Act, the township has oversight of the budget. And when I come in, it had been kind of routinely just rubber stamped and they moved on. And yet, when you look into the law, the township board is responsible to see how they're using the money. The law says we can approve the budget all or in part. We can question how something's being done, send it back for a change in the way that's handled. And it is a responsibility of the township board. At the same time, it calls for the township board to fill the seats, the vacated seats on the park board. And it's the responsibility of the board. There used to be 5 of us here, and it was the responsibility of 5. Now there are 7 of us. So when this issue hit my desk, there's a history of the parks landing on my desk or the township or in the township office, excuse me, whether it's my desk or through Karen or the treasurer office. And back several years ago, during my first term in office, we were getting a lot of complaints from residents regarding the parks. And of course, we would always start out and say, the parks are a separately elected board, you need to call the park office. Well, the question back then was, the complaint was with Tony Brinker, or the park director, and when you call the park, you get the director. So their question was, what good does that do? So I went to the park board to one of their meetings, and I spoke in public comment. We actually found it in the minutes, because we've been going through some of their minutes of late. I'll touch that later. But I went to the board and I said, you have a fiduciary responsibility to the residents. If they have a complaint, they ought to be able to contact the board. And at that time, the board wasn't listed on the website, and there wasn't a way to get to the board. And some of the board members at that time said, well, we didn't know that was our responsibility. And I said, actually, one of them asked me what I meant by a fiduciary responsibility, and I said, it's spelled out in the law. It should be part of your policies and procedures. They had never seen those. So my office, with the help of my assistant, Amy, we created a booklet that we brought back to the next month meeting and passed out. And in that notebook, it had the Michigan Park Act with the compiled laws that go with it. It had a copy of their policies and procedures, and it had the Open Meetings Act. And we also told them that Holly Township is a member of the Michigan Township Association. They have a legal department. Now, their legal department won't give you legal advice, but you can call them with questions, and they will tell you where within the compiled laws that falls. They will tell you what the law is and how it deals with that. And I said, you can call that number. It's free because we pay for our membership. You call them, you tell them I'm a Holly Township Park Commission, I'm an elected official, and they will talk to you, and they will go quite in depth over the law, and they will stop short, and they will tell you, I'm not going to give you legal advice. Now that you understand it and how it applies to your situation, your next step would be to talk to the attorney. But it certainly saves money because you don't have to go through all that beginning in trying to understand it with the attorney. Now that you understand, you can call the attorney and say, does it fall this way or that way? And it's pretty useful. Lord knows I've used them a lot since I've been in office to understand things. So when this landed on my desk, I looked at the law, I called the Michigan Township Association, and my question was this. The law is clear. You have from the date that the vote is certified, and that is, the state law says it has to happen within 10 days of the election. The date that the vote is certified, you have from then until January 1st. Now, I've heard some people, their concern was, why weren't these people notified? It's my understanding, and Karen's here, she can defend herself, that has never been a practice of our office. The state law does not require it, and the reason it doesn't is because you can get sworn in by the township, by the county, by the state, and any notary public would swear you in and hand you a paper that you would turn in. So it isn't Karen's sole responsibility to make sure you're sworn in. It's one of the options. The state law is clear, you can go anywhere. So I also heard some people make the comments about the township office was closed the last 2 weeks of December. The township office was not closed. We were open on Monday before Christmas and on Thursday after Christmas. Then both the deputy treasurer and myself were in. The clerk's office was closed, but you were able to call them on the phone, and if need be, they came in.
And email.
Or you could email them, and they came in. They did that to handle building permits and some of the stuff that needed to be dealt. The treasurer's office was down to the deputy, and my office was me. The following week was New Year's, and I was sick. And I wasn't going to open the office with just one person in the office. Many of you have been to Holly Township office. You can't see much of what goes on in there from outside. And at a time where we're collecting taxes with cash, I've talked to other community leaders, the village manager, other supervisors. Nobody opens their office with just one person. So we were down, and I closed the office, much against the wishes of my deputy treasurer. She said, I can come in, I can do it. We don't have to be open to collect taxes because we have arrangements with with State Bank, and you can go in there with no additional fee, you can pay your taxes, it gets deposited right into our account because we're connected with them, and they actually have better hours than we do from that standpoint. That being said, I closed the office on those 2 days because I only had one person to operate it. The only other time was we closed, we've run into sickness again. In January, I think there was a day, did we close or no?
I think so. I think there was
I
a
think
day
we
or
had
two
one
had to
day
close, 'cause
that
there
we
was just no
closed.
one there.
Yeah, and it was the same time.
There was a bunch of snow days, so I couldn't come in because all the schools were closed.
So
yeah.
at any rate, so that just deals with that. So back to the case at hand. So I called the MTA and I said, I gotta ask you a question. And I deal with logic a lot. Sometimes I've made the statement I need to leave it outside the door because our laws and rules and regulations sometimes defy logic, at least in my mind. I said, why do we have a rule that says if you're not sworn in by New Year's Day, your seat is vacated on the 2nd? It is then the responsibility of the township board to fill those seats. And within that responsibility, you can reassign the seats to those people that were elected. I said, that makes no sense to me. If it's that easy, why do we have the law at all? So I have to call a special meeting, put those 4 people, they have to be sworn in, and it's all over. And I said, why would we do that? And she said to me, she said, George, that's there for exceptions. She said, maybe a person gets caught out of the country. Maybe a person's in the hospital and can't do that. That would be up to the board to review to see if there were exceptions. I said, okay, I guess that makes more sense to me than just blatantly jump over and do it. So at that point, we reached out to the attorney. And from that, the letters went out that were orchestrated between the attorney and the clerk's office. They were sent out both by email and by certified mail. All of them were received by certified mail except for the one that went to Kathleen Martin. That one never got picked up. We got it back after 10 days or whatever the process is. There was an immediate phone call by Donna McBride to the clerk's office, which wasn't a very pleasant voicemail that was left on your phone that came in. We didn't hear from the other 2 people at that point in time. Over the process, through the attorney, it was decided to open this up to get names in it. The other problem that I had with this was in the 8 years I've been here, there's been a constant problem with the parks that continues to land on my desk because they're not following procedures, because they're not following laws, and people would come in with concern. There are several people that sat on the board for 1 term. They didn't run again because they were so frustrated felt like they couldn't get anything done and weren't being listened to. One of them came in the office and was very concerned about how the credit card was being handled and the abuse there. And my question to him is, I said, it shouldn't be hard to monitor. What do the logs say? Well, there weren't any logs for how this stuff was being used. So that became a problem. Another time it came into my office, the chair was concerned that he was being made to do something that was illegal. He said, I was told I'm supposed to take the truck that's in the garage and scrap it. And I said, you can't do that. It's paid for by tax dollars. There's a process. I said, what's wrong with the truck? He says, I don't know. It's in the garage. It hasn't run for a long time. And I said, is it a beat up old? He said, no, it's a nice looking truck. It's got a bumper rusted, but it's got low miles on it. And I said, why doesn't it run? He said, I don't know. So we got in the car, we drove over there, and the gentleman that works there, I think his name is Tom, that works in there, I asked him if he knew, and he said, I don't know, it's never run since I've been here. So at that point I told Kurt, I said, I think the only thing you can do, that would be my recommendation, would be to have it go down to Coleman's and ask him to take a look at it and say, what's wrong with it? So we drove over to look at the truck. It seemed like a nice truck. It's an old truck from the 90s, but it's been in the garage for years. So we opened the hood. Everything seemed to look right there. We put a set of jumper cables on it, and the truck started. Well, we went to move the truck, and it was obvious it had no brakes. So Kurt had the truck taken up to Coleman's to find out what was wrong with the truck. Within a few hours, Ed said, you can come up the truck, it's all ready to go. It was $200 and something. It needed some brake pads, it had a line that was out, and the truck was running. Well, the board got upset with me, both Joe and Donna McBride, and the argument was, the board voted on it, we voted to scrap it, now you come in and change it. And I said, well, that's not procedure. State law says you can't do it that way. But I asked for the minutes and I asked for the agenda. Nobody could find it. And I said, if you did it, and they said, well, it must have been missed. I said, you have to approve your minutes. And it would have to be, and if you knew that you approved it and it isn't in the minutes, that's when you're supposed to amend them. But I said, so you have no record of that decision. And at that point, had Kurt Miskovich done what he was told, he would have had no defense for the backside of that. Well, at the next meeting, I went to that next meeting to explain that. And at that point, Joe Hutchins said, well, the truck runs now, we might as well keep it. And it's my knowledge, it's still there. So we have the truck from the 90s, we have another truck from 205, and at the same time, the person that was concerned about the credit card and how much gas was being purchased at the time, which was in excess of $250 a month, with no logs or no records to show how that was being used. So you had two trucks there, and they were paying the director to use her own truck. So that was an issue that never got resolved. The other issues that happened along the way, and I'm not going to go into every one of them, but there are two that were of a concern, were when the board would come with their budget, you have line items on a budget that shows your income and your expected outcome, or expenditures. On that budget, they always had a line item for expenditures for the concession stand at the beach. However, they didn't have a line item for income from that concession stand. So the question was, you have a concession stand, where's the money going? Well, we just put it in the general fund. Again, that's not the way that's supposed to be handled. That never got fixed. Eventually, it's my understanding they shut down the concession stand. But that never got fixed. Then it came into my office next that through Mr. Miskovich, that he was concerned last night that they did something illegal. And it turns out they went into private or closed session. The director was retiring. She had submitted a paper that said that this was what money she had coming. They went into closed session. That's not a reason for going into closed session. The only time you go into closed session with an employee is if it's a discipline matter, and then it's up to the employee to decide whether they want that issue heard in the public or if they want it in closed session. So again, that was a violation of the Open Meetings Act. In that Open Meetings Act, they had made the decision to pay the director $23,000 roughly on her way out the door. And the paper that was there called for a bunch of money due to comp time. Well, the director is paid a salary and typically don't get comp time. They're the ones in charge of their schedule. If they work more hours one week, they can take time off the other. But their policies and procedures said comp time was granted by the director. Well, again, that's a problem. You can't be approving your own pay, your own time. Comp time, if there was some kind of an arrangement made, although again, you can't have comp time for a salaried employee, but there could be an arrangement that would be part of the contract with the board that didn't exist. So my recommendation then was to contact the township attorney. And the way to fix the Open Meetings Act, and I called Joe Hutchins at the time and said, you're going to have to reschedule your meeting and hold this in open meeting. At the same time, the attorney took the paper that was turned in by the director and the policies and procedures, and she issued an opinion. And I think that opinion covered the fact that you can't have comp time, that some of these things weren't allowed. There's only so much carryover allowed based on both policies, procedure, and state law. And her recommendation was for a check more in the line of, I think it was over 5,000 and not quite 6,000, if I remember correctly. And the board rescheduled that meeting. My point in telling you these things is there's been this constant issue with how procedures are handled, how motions are made. I had people come in after this went public and voice their concerns about reappointing these people with a multitude of, I'll call them stories. They were their stories. I talked with Amy Childers. I asked her if she would be willing to come tonight and say that. And she said to me that she would not because she was too uncomfortable with that. I said, did you ever file a complaint on that? And she said, no, she wouldn't do that because they know where I live. And her concern was that, and I would not have brought it up tonight. I did have Mr. Lontine came into the office with his application, asked if he could speak with me, and I said, come on in. And
I did not ask to speak to you.
you didn't come into my office?
I was told to go drop off the packet in your office by Karen Winchester when I came in front of her desk. I did not ask to speak.
Okay, so you came in, but I was happy you did because I said I had wanted to reach out to him because I have this story and I want to have somebody else have an opportunity to talk about it. And at that time, we had that conversation and I had the discussion with Mr. Lentine. My other concern with Dave is he has a direct conflict with the Flint Town Flyers. If you go to their website, he is a board member of the Flint Town Flyers, and he's a board member for the parks. Public parks are not supposed to be used for game. I'm sorry. I see you shaking your head. It's on the web. We went to the state register, and he's registered as a board member with the state.
It's not a board. It's not an actual board.
Well, it's registered with the state.
It's a club. He runs it.
It's a disc golf club.
It's a disc golf.
appointed 2 years ago.
Like
It's literally a disc golf club.
It has been a board for over 7 years.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, that's.
then somebody needs to do what they need to do to take it off the state registry, because it's, as far as the state concerned, it still exists. I'm just telling you what our research found. There was another complaint about the side-by-side that was bought. And again, I went in to look into it. We went in to look at the minutes to find out what happened there. Now, state law says when you make a purchase with taxpayer dollars, you have to get 3 bids. You have to put out an RFP and take bids. And you're supposed to have a minimum of 3 bids. Out here in Holly, we're not always able to do that. I know the Township Board put out an RFP and only got 1 bid. We then put out the RFP a second time, and that time we only got 2 bids. So we finally had to make the decision, and we had done our due diligence with the RFP, and we moved forward. There was no RFP put out for this. The problem with the bids, there were 3 bids, but they were all for a different piece of equipment. Different brand, different equipment. They're supposed to be of like kind. You're supposed to put out the specifics as to what it is we're looking to purchase, and that wasn't done. There have been, these problems just keep reoccurring. Then I had a conversation with we have apparently an agreement with the village that was never put down on paper. It was agreed between the village and the director. The village stores refuse in the way of sticks and twigs and trees they cut down, and then periodically they come in and shred it, and that was there. And it was my understanding from a different resident that originally that was supposed to create mulch where the residents could go and get it, except there's a lock on the gate and they can't get in. So that was another concern. So I looked into that. Well, it turns out I was told that the lock on the gate was put on because people were coming and dumping other stuff, which doesn't surprise me. We have that problem with that's why we now have dumpsters with codes on them to keep people from dumping stuff that doesn't belong there. So again, I had to look at that. Well, I talked to the DPW, Brian Clausen, director, and it was my understanding he was invited to come to a meeting, and he said, I won't go to a meeting. He had talked to a couple of the board people on the on the phone, and he said, I got yelled at. I'm not going to talk to these people. They weren't, and I'm certainly not going to go to the board to stand there and let them all yell at me at one time. So that was a concern for me. At that point, when we looked through some of these minutes and tried to make sense of this stuff, just one of the examples that Amy came across was that the board, they don't have a laptop. So then they got a laptop that was donated to them by the veterans. But we remembered them buying a laptop. We went into the minutes and we found in March of, is it 22, that the board had approved a laptop to be bought. Tony Brinker later reports that she bought it. We see in the April meeting that Adobe was paid for it and Internet Office and so forth was paid to put on the laptop. And then the laptop was paid for in May. Then in June, I'm sorry? We're just going by the minutes. You're welcome to see them. They're public record. Okay, I know, but I'm just telling you what we're able to read in these minutes. Then, in the next month, the park board again pays for Adobe and pays for the services for the laptop. So now you've paid for the same service twice, both in this minutes and in these minutes. Well, the problem was there's no laptop, which is why the veterans donated a laptop to the parks. So what happened to the laptop? Nobody knows. The laptop that Donna McBride had, which is the one that came from the veterans, she returned, but now they can't get into it. She gave them a password, but apparently it can't be opened. I don't know, I haven't had it checked. I'm just telling you what the people at the office have told us. I don't know. My point in all of this is it just seems to be over and over and over. I know, Kathleen, can you tell me how many times have you called MTA and talked to them? None?
But if I'm being asked my opinion, if I might.
I can't hear you.
If I'm being asked my opinion or a question here, may I interject that most of your examples are from two boards before our board, current board? Most of your examples.
I'm getting people who want you to come. No, I understand.
No, what I was making reference to is that you are bringing up in your examples, many, many examples from boards that were two boards previous to the current board. There's been issues the whole entire time.
I was going to say, they go back 8 years.
But the issues that you have gone into detail here about tonight are from boards two, not the last board, but two boards.
You're telling me Amy Childers was not part of this board?
No, sir, I'm not saying that. She was never part of this
Okay.
board. She was an employee.
But I'm saying she was there during this board.
What I am saying is that a lot of your examples had to do with a former director
No, I understand. I'm trying to give a
and
history.
not the current board.
I get that.
Thank you.
I get that. I'm trying to give a history of what we've had to deal with at the township with this board. And two of you have been there all of those 8 years, because you said you were there for 8 years. Okay. And please, this is not personal. We're neighbors. Donna McBride has had issues with me before and come to the board and called me out. Then I ran into her at the grocery store, and we've had friendly conversations. Kathleen is my neighbor. We've shared conversations before on things, and I'm not trying to make this personal. I'm trying to look at a situation that has been a problem and has been dysfunctional for all of these years and just does not seem to be able to fix itself. So one of the other concerns I had because of the way this purchase went down was I talked to the CPA for the township parks. And in that conversation, I asked her what her relationship was with the board. And she took a pause and she said, boy, how do I put this? She said, at best, They're incredibly dysfunctional. She then went on to say that she had trouble getting the board to cooperate, getting her the stuff she needed for the audit, to the point where she had to go and create her own files and keep her own stuff to get through the audit. These are just red flags over and over and over. And I'll be honest with you, I struggle with this stuff. I struggle with the things I have to do as the chair. And I have been invited by Senator Slotkin to attend the inauguration in Washington, an opportunity of a lifetime. I jumped on it. We went to Washington for that. And while we were there, we went into, they have a tour bus, hop on, hop off tours, is what it's called. And you can ride around and get on the bus, get off, and see all the different things. And one of the things I went to was the Martin Luther King Memorial. And I just want to read you this quote because it hit me right between the eyes. It said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." That just hit home. When I talk to the neighboring community that is part of our community and their DPW who helps us by plowing and taking care of this stuff, when he no longer wants to work with those people, that's a concern. When he's not willing to accept their invitation to a meeting because of the way he's been treated, that's a concern. When I talk to the CPA and I hear the things I heard from her today, that's a concern. This board needs a revamp, in my opinion. And I read and tell you this history for that reason. When we got these apps, I looked at them. And one of the first names I'm going to recommend for tonight is that of, wait a minute. What happened to this? Is Jane DeSessa. She has a background in local government. She's been a village manager. She's been doing this since 1990. This is a person that understands parliamentary procedure. This is a person that understands the laws. This is a person that understands all of this. She's been doing it for 30 years. She happens to live 2 doors down from Sorensen Park. She is retired and is interested in being on the board. And as the first name I would bring forward to this board, I would make a motion that we fill one of the vacated seats with Jane DeSessa. Is there support?
Support.
Motion by Cullis, support by Mattson. Is there any further discussion on this person?
More of a question of, we have one new business item. Are we going to be doing this as we're appointing all 4 under one?
Yes. Yeah, we have to appoint all 4. I'm not reading
So
all.
then you'll have to say in the motion that all 4 names, correct? Because you just said 1.
Well, I don't want to put all 4. Well, so here's the issue. I can bring all 4 forward, but if somebody agreed with 2 or 3, but not all 4,
So then I think we just need to have discussion about the names and then make a motion for the 4 names after we've had discussion.
how does the rest of the board feel? Are you fine with that?
Just so that, because we want to be correct in this, I don't want to make 4 separate motions and it's not on the agenda. So we either need to amend the agenda for the names.
Well, the agenda does say appointments with an S. So what you're saying, so that's what we're going to do. I was going to do them separately, but I can do all 4 if that's what the board would prefer.
It's more or less just a procedural question for me. I want to make sure we do this right, because we just made the motion for 1 person, but if we have to make the motion for the 1 business item, then I feel
Well, I could make
all
the motion
names-
for the first of 4,
Okay.
if you feel that would be better.
Historically, for like the planning commission and zoning appointments, you've made individual motions for each appointment.
It doesn't matter if it's listed as one item on the agenda, right?
No, because it's appointments.
Okay. Otherwise, I do understand the argument for the will of the people, and they were on and they were voted by the people. I do also understand the argument for the other side that we are obviously having some people issues, it sounds like, procedural issues. You know, concerns of OMA violations, which, you know, could cost the taxpayer money if there was, you know, anything to come about with that. That's obviously a huge concern. So that would be our responsibility to do our due diligence to not allow that to happen. But these people also did take the time to get on the ballot and go through the process and get elected in. But on the topic of Jane DeSessa, I think she has an excellent background for what it is with these procedural issues, obviously is well-versed in government, interacted with her personally, briefly, so I don't know of her character, but seems to be of a good character person. So as far as Jane's background and qualities for the position, I think would be a fabulous fit. But I do understand both sides of the argument, and it is something that even now sitting here, I do weigh and struggle with a little bit, so.
All right, any other discussion?
So I will just say I've honestly heard probably personally more, not just in here, about replacing the members. I think we have some very talented individuals in here. I hope to see them on the ballot in 2 years. I have friends in this, and I have called all my friends that are in this and told them I will be voting no. They are all aware of that. Just because I feel that because they were voted, they have that ability. Now, if they want to be removed, the people can speak again, recall these members, and then I would be more than happy to recommend any of these people after that takes place.
All right, thank you. Any other comments?
Well, I have a concern with how do we stop this from happening again? What are the steps to bring ethics into bear on this, and what can we do?
So,
apparently this has been going on for a long time. Is there you get complaint over complaint over complaint on a board. How do you stop it?
So there are two problems. In fact, and I meant to mention this because somebody made a comment that this is an anomaly. It's never happened before. It's actually happened in several communities across the state, and it's something that happens every election cycle. It's the way the law is written, and you know, we talk about these are the people that people voted for, but they voted for them to follow the law, to do the rules, and they didn't. And in this case, they don't have exceptions. We went back on the two board members that have been on there the longest, and they both independently got sworn in before. And Karen's been doing this 25 years, and she says she has never contacted people to be sworn in. She never contacted me. I know that.
I know Tony was the one that would make sure her board came to the office. But it was not me that reached out to people.
Well, and it's not in the state
Because
law
then
for her to do
the
that
person
because
I forget,
there are so many
then
places they
it's
can be.
me. I can't be the responsible person to follow everybody and make sure that they get sworn in.
So that's part of it. Then the second part is, you know, the law was written for a reason, and it's there. And we've seen in the news where boards get sworn in all together. They have public ceremonies. They're all over the place. We've heard tonight from a couple of the people that they didn't think about it or forgot about it or whatever their reasons were. And again, I said I weighed that heavily because the easy thing would be just to walk in and rubber stamp and walk away. But at the same time, I can't ignore all this other stuff that's there. And I can't help but somebody said it's karma. Maybe the karma was knowing that this needs a reset. And that's, I don't know. But I looked at these resumes when they come in, And I think if we're gonna right the ship for this park board with all these problems that are there, you know, I mean, I could go on and on even during the current board. When you go over to the parks, there's a building behind the garage that has 4 garage doors. It's for storage. They have good quality stuff sitting out in the yard when it could be in storage. The storage bins, according to, I've seen some of them, several of them are just full of junk that needs to be hauled out and gotten rid of. I see heads nodding yes out there. This is, it's not anybody's personal storage.
That's what he uses it for.
Okay,
Then the board
it's
needs-
up to the board to make a decision. You put it on the agenda and you make a decision and you deal with it. That's all I can say to that. All I know is there've been opportunities. We've done from our office what we could to get you the right information to help you. It continues to come back in my office, and I can't ignore it anymore. Like I said, these are my recommendations. It's up to this board. This is the first one that we're looking at. Is there any more discussion from the board? All right. Oh, we don't have a secretary. We need a roll call, I guess.
Richard Kinnaman,
No.
Mike McCanny,
No.
Ryan Matson,
Yes.
Jen Ryan,
Yes.
Karen Winchester, yes, George Cullis.
You didn't
And
take,
myself, no.
Sorry, Dare.
That's fine.
yes. Motion carries 4-3. The next one I was going to bring forward was James Wright. He has quite an impressive background, both in the IT. That's another thing I failed to mention as I was talking about this. The park board doesn't currently have a website. You can't access this stuff. The township board during budget discussions has asked repeatedly for the township board to record their meetings and make them available. Every other group, every other community does that. Now, I was told that they can't do it because they don't have internet. And yet, Oakland County came for a SISMA meeting, and they produced a live meeting using the internet that was there. If you don't have internet, you can take a camera. We have so much equipment nowadays. We did it one time to show them. We went over with my camera and tripod, and we recorded a meeting. You can sit and record it with cell phones. They continually refuse to do that. The problem with that is when somebody complains about something that happened in a meeting, you can't go back and there's no proof, there's no nothing.
Right, but Mr. Collins, you have to remember, please, 8 years ago,
Yeah, actually, Mr. Collis, I'm sorry, just a point of order on this. We're talking about procedural issues and things, and this is the time for board comments, not back and forth conversation with the public.
But
Is
the reason
my
we-
personal opinion. And I understand things are being said about people in this room, and that's uncomfortable, but if we want to run an efficient meeting and we're talking about procedural things, we need to walk the walk. So this is our time.
All right, you're right. I'm sorry. Thank you.
we were promised a computer and a setup by you with extra money 8 years ago. When Tony Bricker was still the director, and it never appeared. If it had appeared, we could have been recording these.
I never promised that the township board by law can't pay for that. It's okay. Sorry. Sorry. So anyway, James Wright, you've got the resume in front of you. It comes with 2 letters of recommendation. No, not this one. This is Jeffrey Carl. I'm sorry. But the letter in the front and the resume, he's got IT experience. He's got he was a census field manager, office operations manager. He's got quite a few things on his resume where he's had to follow rules and policies and procedures and do that, and I think that would be another good candidate. James Wright is, lives in Holly Township, and his information's in front of you. That would be my second name to bring forward. So I would make a motion to fill the second chair with James Wright. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Clerk Winchester. And I would now open Mr. Wright up for discussion. None appearing? Can we-
I think having the IT background is very good, because the meetings are not recorded, I believe, at this time. And then having the experience with the Holly Little League and everything, makes sense.
All right. Any other discussion? Mr. Burton, you were perfectly behind Karen. I couldn't see you.
Yeah, no, he's a great guy though, but I will be a no.
All right, thank you. Roll call, please.
Derek Burton?
No.
Jen Ryan?
Yes.
Karen Winchester, yes. Ryan Manson?
Yes.
Mike McCanny?
No.
Richard Kinman?
No.
Was that a yes? No, I couldn't hear you. Sorry.
George Cullis?
Yes. Motion carries 4-3. Next on the list is Cynthia Earl. She brought her application in and talked. Here's a person that, with her job, she's a physical therapist. She's been registered. She's gone through the different things to get her there. She's worked with the Chamber of Commerce and Fenton United Way in Zonta, so she's familiar with working with organizations. She's been a lifelong resident here in Holly, and I felt out of the applications we had that she was a good, so she is who I would recognize for that third chair. I make a motion to appoint Cynthia Earl to the third open seat. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Treasurer Ryan. I would open it up for discussion by the board. None appearing. Can we get a roll call?
Karen Winchester, yes. Jen Ryan?
Yes.
Derek Burton?
No.
Ryan Manson?
Yes.
Mike McCanny?
No.
Richard Kinman?
No.
George Cullis?
Yes. Motion carries 4-3. So the last one that I would recommend, and this is after having an extensive conversation. This gentleman came in the office today. There are some letters of recommendation. John Winglemeyer came over to the office to talk about this. And there's a recommendation from Gordy Dreyer as well. After talking with Mr. Carl, I found that he had some of the same concerns that we had found and looked at. And sorry. What was that?
I bumped the mic with the
Oh, goodness, it sounded, because the speaker, it sounded like coming from it. All right, so that would be my fourth recommendation for the final seat. Motion to appoint Jeffrey Carl for the fourth seat. Is there support?
Support?
Support by Derek Burton. Is there any discussion on this one? None appearing. Roll call, please.
Richard Kinman?
Yes.
Mike McCanny?
Yes.
Ryan Manson?
Yes.
Derek Burton?
Yes.
Jen Ryan?
Yes.
Karen Winchester, yes. George Cullis?
Yes. Motion carries 7-0. So that finishes new business. We will then move on to public comment. Same rules apply as the first time. Limited to 3 minutes. State your name and address when you come to the podium. Anyone for public comment? Kristen?
Kristen Watt, 102 South First Street, number 3. Clearly, I'm disappointed. However, really didn't have any, I hate to say this, I did not have any high expectations that anything I wanted was going to get accomplished here tonight. So I do want to thank those of you who, for whatever your choice was, standing with the will of the voters on some of these choices. I do want to say I do know Jane DeSessa very well. Well, not very well, but well enough. And she is highly qualified, and I am glad to see someone very qualified like that on that board. However, one of the things I do feel deeply about in this community that is a problem is that we have multiple people sitting on multiple boards. They're doing one person doing 10 things. You can only do a few things well. You cannot do 15 things well. And I do feel like if you are currently already serving on another board or commission, which Jane does, along with Joe Hutchins on the Village Parks, there's an opportunity for all these qualified people that you even talked about to serve. And I do have a problem with that. It's a personal issue. But I would like to ask this Board of Trustees that after everything that was expressed here tonight, one, I do have a problem with a lot of old news. Your previous presidents of that Parks Board were Kurt Miskovich, Pat Feeney, and Joe Hutchins twice. Joe Hutchins is the only one on the board, and all the problems you talked about, he was leading it. So let's not poo-poo on everybody in this room. Secondly, Joe Hutchins has personal property with a personal lock on taxpayer property at Sorensen Park and the beach, including a personal popcorn machine. So if we're going to all support Joe Hutchins, let's hold him to toe the line the same way. Number 3, 2 years ago, myself and many other women, not many, 3, and 1 gentleman, came to you, you talked to some of us, we went and addressed that Township Parks Board with a former chair who is no longer on the board. Let's talk about old business. Let's talk about some people in this room who defended that man after assaulting women, and we had to file police reports. So there's a lot of problems going on that Parks Board that aren't there anymore, that are way beyond old trucks and all this. We've got people putting personal property on taxpayer dimes. We've got all kinds of crazy leadership that happened. In my opinion, the solution here is, I don't know who's responsible for doing it, find them some training, do that kindness. Find, if it's not your job to babysit them, then maybe we could find some actual training to, I don't know, team building, I don't know, whatever it is for whoever's gonna come together. And part 3, or lastly, all of everything that's been said tonight, welcome to the new board. I wish them the best. I hope our parks are fantastic. Thank you to everyone who served. But I am going to say that if you take everything that's been discussed here tonight, you addressed most of what I commented on, and you addressed most of what many people commented on, and I really appreciate that, by the way, because you don't have to, and you did, so I do appreciate it. But in regard to my comment, and now I will name him since you did, and the other person that complained, Mr. Lontine stated that when he came to your office, you relayed information from a former employee that they were scared of him and that he was an unmedicated bipolar. First of all, you don't know, that's none of your business. Number 2, if he's so scary, why would you tell him who said that about him? She wouldn't even want to come here tonight because she's scared he knows where she lives. And then she told him. So at the end of the day, it is really unfair. You don't know his medical business. That is none of your business. And I still stand by my statement that you violated the ADA, because that was somewhat a job interview, since you were the one who got to a point. This is not comfortable for me to say. I'd rather be at karaoke right now. In fact, that's where I'm headed, to go cleanse myself from the frustration I have. But whether you like them, whether they suck, whether they're the most horrible trustees you've ever had and they mismanage money, the people still voted them in. This is on the people. And I still stand by, what is the point? I understand there's laws, but the people chose this. You don't have to like what the people choose. Believe me, I don't like a lot of what the people chose right now, and I'm trying to get through. So I'm super disappointed in that aspect, but I will continue to work with every one of you, differences aside. I have a lot of respect for what you do. Karen, it is a thankless job in elections. Thank you, Jen Ryan, for what you do. George, even thank you for what you do, even though you and I disagree often. But I feel like, why does it matter? And half those people, if you want to be on a parks board, fill out the papers, get the signature, pay the money, and get your ass on the ballot. I'm sorry, it's the second time I've cussed this week at a meeting. I apologize. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Randy?
Randy Finkbeiner, 15335 Catalina Way. I still don't agree with superseding an election. I think it should be corrected at the ballot box. Some of you did voice that, which is good. You've done what you've done as a board. Now that you have a new set of members installed by 4 people, will there be a swearing in, and will it be public, and will it be certified? Do these people need to be sworn in, or?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I would suggest maybe at a board meeting, the next public board meeting, because any of these people aren't here. They're not even here representing themselves.
There are a couple of them.
Oh, there's one? Okay, I don't know these people, but
Okay.
I would, if I was doing this, if I was in this position, I would be here. I'd be sitting in this thing. I'd be up here. I'd be wanting to be here and be part of it. So now if they can be sworn in publicly, it gets on record, it gets on tape, we won't have that problem again. And everybody will know there's something on record for it. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Sorry for the meeting running over. Again, Kathleen Martin, 109 Park Avenue, just very disappointed in the decisions that were made this evening. We're a small town. We are neighbors. And if there's oversights and things going on, I think there's much better ways to handle it than pulling rugs out from under current situations. Mr. Cullis, I am so disappointed that you chose to dig so deeply into, again, 2 boards previous for most of your examples of the dysfunction of this board. It has been very hard for the last 8.5 years because of personalities that were, appointed to our commission to get through all the things that we had to get through with once a month meetings and all the drama and all the appointees having baggage and expectations come with them that were not the will of the people. It was the will of a couple of people. And they're all gone. They left. So I guess my point is that with a commission that I feel was moving in the right direction finally, and I have a hard time believing that Joe Hutchins wrote that letter at all while I'm talking about this, because Joe doesn't use technology, and for a letter to state that Joe Hutchins said that we're hiding in the woods without recordings, he doesn't even have a cell phone. He is so hard to reach. He doesn't answer his home phone. I mean, and this is the person that is in charge of running this commission for how many terms? I mean, it's my public comment.
I know.
And the problem that I'm going to have going forward is reining it in, because we are neighbors. This is not the way that neighbors treat each other in a small town. That's one of the reasons I moved here. It's going to be difficult for me to see some of the faces here around town and still be happy and pleasant, because I don't feel that I've been treated that way. Mr. Cullis, the last time that I talked to you, you were in, I'm trying to remember where it was, because I was preparing for the meeting, for the January 8th meeting. So I called you and I wanted to know about a sign that I had asked you about, finding out more information on because of one of the issues that was stated, that nobody knows where Sorensen Park is, it's underutilized, and other things to that nature. You laughingly told me that you were stuck somewhere states away, doing an honorable thing, trying to collect I believe it was a ramp for a citizen in need. If you're willing to go that far, and you couldn't answer my question either, by the way, because you said that I was on the list for you to call, but the list wasn't with you. So you were states away, the last time I spoke with you, doing an honorable thing for a citizen in need, and had gotten stuck there because of the weather. My question to you is, as your neighbor, why wasn't I or the other board members treated with the same honor, in the same respect, that you would go states away to pick up a ramp for? It just doesn't sit well. I wish all the new board members well. Joe Hutchins is part, if not parcel, of the problem, so good luck with that, and thank you for the dissenters who sided with the will of the people.
All right,
Good
thank you
night.
for your comment. Anyone else for public comment? All right, we will adjourn this meeting at 8:07.